Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to talk here. My name is Vladimir Tsitrin. I work as a quantum security research lead at FCAT, which is the Fidelity Center for Applied Technology. It's an R&D department at Fidelity Investments, big financial company. So, FCAT is looking into new technologies, and our goal is to explore what's available, what's coming up, and to make sure that Fidelity is ready for the change whenever the change is needed. So, specifically at our quantum lab, we deal with quantum computing on one side, and with its flip side, with quantum security. Quantum security is like inevitable evil of quantum computing, and because of potential quantum advantage, there is a quantum threat. And the threat is primarily on the classical cryptography side, which becomes vulnerable for quantum computing algorithms. And that means that information which is being exchanged, being encrypted with classical algorithms, even now can be at risk long term. Especially if you deal with long-term data, like personal data, financial information, corporate secrets, digital assets like cryptocurrencies, and so on. So our goal is, as I said, to explore technologies, to see what exists already in the market, what people work on, and what will show up soon. And we build experimental prototypes, but we also work on integrating those prototypes into real enterprise systems. Because we have our empirical postulates, like no single security control can solve all security problems. So you can't solve everything with cryptography, with bars and locks, with monitoring, with the procedures, operational support, etc., etc. So you need a reasonable combination of all types of controls in order to protect your assets. And again, it won't be just, even after all the advances, it won't be all quantum or still not quantum. It will be a combination of both. So what we build is kind of an addition or extension of our enterprise infrastructure. So we work with vendor products to build the QKD clusters. So we have two clusters working already, one in New England between Boston and Merrimack, and another one in North Carolina, where we exchange the keys. But since the distance between those clusters is quite long, so we on top of them, we build the KMS layer and connect those clusters with post-quantum security. On top of that, we build the keys API, which is API compliant with company standards, and API which is providing access to applications, systems, whoever want to experiment with our quantum-generated keys. So between QKD cluster and KMS, it's usually local connectivity, and going up, it's protected with PQC. So we started with a single connectivity. We have two locations. We have two QKD devices, more or less standard implementation, fiber, approximately 90 kilometers between the locations, classical channel for coordination, post-processing, etc. Then, because there is the API itself on QKD devices is like regular SSL, so we built our own co-located server, which is extracting the keys using SF14 protocol from the devices, and then it propagates those keys up through the API to the applications. And then applications get those keys and can communicate a secure way. So, and KMS also is doing the coordination and propagation of the keys. So then, as I mentioned, we have two clusters working now at the bottom between New England and North Carolina. We are building a new one in Ireland, approximately 200 kilometers. So that one inevitably will have trusted nodes. That's another thing we want to experiment with. And then we link all three clusters with post-quantum cryptography. But the long-term goal is to extend QKD as much as possible, because we believe it's more secure technology, but make it like cluster-to-cluster connectivity, and then implement local connectivity using other technologies. Like there are some kind of variations of QKD some companies are working on. There is PQC, post-quantum crypto, and we try to combine all of that, like quantum, post-quantum, quasi-quantum, if you want, into a hybrid model to have like end-to-end solution. So we also look into linking our remote clusters like Ireland and, in this case, North Carolina over satellite using prepare and measure methodology, and potentially working with North Carolina to New England over entanglement. Another thing we found out while working on satellite analysis is the rates of key generation are quite different. So for fiber, for example, we have approximately, right now we have approximately 1 million keys per day generated. For prepare and measure, the estimation is approximately 1,000 keys per day. For entanglement, it's approximately 100 keys per year, which means a very low number. And we need to develop a policy and methodology how to actually store those keys, how to use them, how to operate them afterwards. So what we do is we build the connectivity with the local connectivity from ground stations to HSMs, hardware security modules, which provide long-term storage, extra levels of protection, and standardized operation for those keys. So we kind of create a classification of keys, less precious, more precious, and then we apply the policies towards storing and operating them. So for fiber-generated keys, again, we have like approximately 1 million generated per day. And by the key, I mean in this case, it's a standard SHA-256 symmetric key. So just to make sure everybody's on the same page. For those, we can store them in memory and provide as needed, because if this equipment fails, if we can have to reboot it, whatever, then it's quite easy to restore them, or actually generate new ones. So while working on analysis of this satellite terrestrial part integration, we hit into a problem of network segregation. So let's say we have a satellite provider company on the top, and it's like standard prepare and measure operation. So satellite goes over one site, over Alice's cluster, then it generates a set of keys. It goes over all the ocean, arrives to Bob's site, and has another session. And then at the end of those sessions, Bob and Alice share the same set of symmetric keys. Now, in case of QKD implementation over fiber, we can control all the devices. So we can install QKD devices on our premises and fully control them, and only our infrastructure has access to those devices. In case of satellites, it's not possible, because there needs to be coordination between quantum receivers on both sides, coordination between ground stations, satellites, control center, etc., etc. But on the other side, we need, after all those sessions are complete, we need to extract keys from quantum receivers down to our devices. And in most cases, like for big organizations like Fidelity, enterprise security is very reluctant to give access to anybody from outside to our network. So this kind of architecture, when there is shared network between provider, which is a satellite company, and client, in this case us, is impossible. So we came up with a solution, and we're working on a prototype right now. So we build a one-way communication. So we use optical circulators, kind of like an optical diode, ultimately. So there are two devices, one on provider side, another one on the client side, and physically it can be within the same rack, ultimately, all connected with fiber or something like that. So provider is collecting the keys from quantum receivers and pushes them through this circulator optical diode component down to the receiver, which is on the client side. There is no way to send information back through through circulators. So it can be like leak of data is impossible, or some kind of malware injection from the client to provider. But on the client side, what we do, we drop those keys as well as auxiliary information to a shared drive, and then apply some policies towards analyzing whatever we received, running antiviruses, analyzing the structure, extracting those keys ultimately, and in this case, uploading them to HSMs. So another problem we hit into is how to propagate or forward the keys. So let's say we generate keys, say Alice and Bob in this diagram. They are connected over QKD. It's simple. So they both get their keys and they're happy. Now let's say we want to share the keys between Alice and Charlie at the bottom right. So that means we need somehow to relay those keys through a number of nodes. And that usually means there are different approaches towards how to do this, but usually that means you do some kind of encoding and decoding at each node where you have your QKD components. So if by any chance you have a successful eavesdropper at some point, you have a compromised node, that means that eavesdropper in this case can completely get access to the full set of keys. So what we do is we use secret share technology, so we split the key into shares and then route each share through a separate, ideally not intersecting routes. In this case, even if at some point Eve can get access to one share, she still doesn't have access to the full key. So this is an example graph database of our nodes. Just to demonstrate that in non-trivial setup, we can find those different routes, non-intersecting, which can provide a successful implementation of Shamir shares routing of generated keys. And, okay, I'm in time. To sum it up, so there are quantum technologies, quantum security technologies specifically, which already can be applied to proactively secure assets which have long-term value. Again, quantum technologies won't replace classical, but they need to work together for the sound implementation of security infrastructure. Integration needs to take place at multiple levels, like technological levels, physical, detective, policy-based, etc. There are some unique problems, like integration of replacement, for example, of libraries, crypto libraries with post-quantum extensions, those things about integration of various components in satellite implementation. And there are still quite many gaps in vendor implementation of products. For example, post-quantum API, which is usually not provided. And there is still some things to do here as well. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, any questions?
How long would it take to bring Fidelity to compliance to your satisfaction? 20 years, 5 years? What do you think?
I would say maybe like 5 years for now. Yeah.
That sounds fast.
So it's never perfect, but it will be better.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions?
I just wanted to ask, what's the greatest distance that you can anywhere from that?
Sorry, say it again. What distance? QKD? So, like from documentation, from specs, usually it's up to, in the best case, up to 200 kilometers. In our case, it's about 100 kilometers.